Welcome to PPE Paper 3. Okay, for the first part of this, we just multiply the indices, so that gives us k to the power of 12. Second one, we add the indices because we're multiplying, so we get y to the power of 15. And in this one, we've just got to simplify carefully, multiply out the brackets, and we get 5m to the power 4 plus 10m cubed. And that's it. Okay, we just got to be careful to write down the full calculation. So we have 550 people, and each one has 3 sandwiches involving 2 slices of bread for each sandwich. So we would start by writing down 550 people multiplied by 3 sandwiches multiplied by 2 slices of bread. And Jenny assumes that 76% of the people will eat sandwiches. So the amount of bread we need is 76% of that, which we get by working that out. Put that on the calculator and it comes to 2508. Okay, and it says give the answer to the nearest 100 slices. So I'm going to say that's approximately equal to 2,500. Okay, and that's the answer to part A. For part B, well, it seems kind of obvious, but you've got to write something down. Jenny's assumption is wrong because, in fact, only 68% of the people ate sandwiches. Okay, so how does this affect the answer? Well, obviously, less bread is going to be needed, but you need to just give a reason. So I'm going to say that 68% is less than 76%. Okay, so fewer slices needed. Okay, and that should get you the mark for that question. Okay. Now, in this question, we've got to find the total time taken given the speeds and distances covered here. Now, we just need to remind ourselves that speed, distance, and time can be linked together using this triangle here, really, and that is that speed is distance over time. Okay, so that means that time is distance over speed, you see. Well, the total time taken is the sum of the 2 times. So in the first case, it's 110 over 40, okay, for Andrea. And for the other person, it is, well, it's the same person, in fact, 14 kilometers over 8. And when you add those together on the calculator, it comes out to 9 over 2. And that is 4 hours and 30 minutes, because it says give the answer in hours and minutes. Okay. Okay, in this question, we have to give a proof that or show that triangle ABC is isosceles. So this triangle here is isosceles. The diagram won't be drawn to scale, so we have to show sufficient working. Well, what we could do here, there's several approaches. Write the angles in as you find them. I'm going to start by putting that this angle here is 80, and that's easy because it's simply the angles on a straight line. So I'm going to say that ABC, angle ABC, like that, okay, equals 180 minus 100, which is equal to 80. And the reason is angles on straight line. Okay, now you have to give reasons if it asks you to, otherwise you won't get the marks. So we've got one angle in the triangle. Now we could now use the fact that this angle here is 50, and we know that because it's co-interior with this one. Okay, so angle DCF equals 180 minus 130, which is 50. Okay, and I'm just going to put co-interior. Okay, and I could have worked out this angle and then used alternate to get the 50. It doesn't matter, but that's one way of doing it. This one is also 50 because it's vertically opposite. Okay, so angle BCA is 50 degrees vertically opposite. Okay, and we're nearly there because I've got to find one more angle in that triangle. Well, it should be the same as one of the other two to prove that it's isosceles. So I'm just going to say that angle BAC, which you can see would also be 50. Okay, and that's what we need. But why is it 50? Well, angle BAC is 50. Well, it's 180 minus 80 minus the other 50, you see, which is equal to 50. And that's because angles in a triangle add to 180. Okay, and that's it. And we just need to say two equal angles of 50 degrees, therefore isosceles. Two by 50-degree angles, therefore isosceles. Okay, quite a lot of reading to do in this question before you start, but basically we know that an area of 8 by 8 is covered by 5 kilograms of grass seed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with that. So 8 by 8 over 5, and that gives me 12.8. Okay, so that means that 1 kilogram will cover 12.8 square meters. Now, this is the area I've got to cover, so that's 12 times 14. Now, I don't actually need to know what that area is, but I do know that if I divide it by 12.8, which is 1 kilogram's worth of area, if you like, okay, then I can see how many kilograms I'm going to need. So if you do that on the calculator, it comes out to be 13.125. That's how many kilograms of grass seed that she would need. Now, she has in fact got 4 boxes of 3 kilograms, which is equal to 12. So she's short by a little bit because she needs 13.125. So what I'm going to say is that not enough, okay, not enough because 12 is less than 13.125. Therefore, okay, that's an abbreviation for therefore, not enough. Okay, now for the second part of the question, she finds in fact that there's more grass seed than she thought. In fact, there's 3 boxes containing 3.4 kilograms each, and the 4th box contains 3, and that now comes to 13.2 kilograms. So what I'm now going to say is that 13.2 is greater than 13.125, therefore now as enough. Okay, now it was possibly predictable that that's what would happen, but you still have to show your mathematics and your reasoning. Okay, you can't just assume things. Okay. Okay, we've got here a simple inverse proportion problem. Okay, 24 hours for 9 pumps. If you've got 15 pumps, then the time is going to be reduced. And the best way to do this is just to pair them up and say that 24 times 9 must be equal to, well, it's 15, or say x times 15, okay? And then we just rearrange that to find x. So x is the number of hours. Well, it's x equals 24 times 9 over 15, and that comes to 14.4 on the calculator, and that's the answer. Okay, 14.4 hours. It doesn't ask for it in hours and minutes or anything like that, so just leave it like that. Okay. Okay, in this question, this is the volume of sludge that's going to leak from this pipe at this rate. Okay, so what we're going to do is we've got to find out how many hours it takes for that to leak out at that rate. So we're going to need to do the total amount, 98,310. Okay, and we're going to have to divide that by the rate, but also converting it from seconds into hours, we need to do this. We need to do 8.7. Okay, now there's 3,600 seconds in an hour, which is 60 times 60. Okay, and that's going to be our answer. Okay, and that comes to 113 over 36 on the calculator, and that can be written as 3.138 recurring, it comes out as, but it wants it to the nearest hour, so you just need to say 3 hours, okay, to the nearest hour. Or what you could do is just say approximately 3 hours, because they've asked you to give it approximately or to the nearest hour. Okay, so that's that question done. This question is about combining the means, okay? So this is the process. We look for the total age of all the 26 men added together. So it's 26 times 46.2. Now always write your calculation down. Don't just go straight for the calculator. And then the total age of all the women is 30 times 38.2. Okay, and then we divide that by the total number of people altogether, which is 56. Okay, so that's the calculation. Write it down, then put it in the calculator. Okay, because if you got it wrong, you would get no marks at all if you hadn't written any working down. And that does come to 1467 over 35. Okay, that's how it comes out on the calculator as a simplified fraction, and then you can turn that into a decimal because it asks for one decimal place, and that comes to 41.9 to 1 dp. Okay, and that's it. And you would expect that answer to be somewhere between the two ages given here. Okay, so there's a bit of a clue there. Okay. This question is about density, and we have a way of recognizing that, and that is that density is mass divided by volume. Okay, like that. So that means that the mass, which is what we need to find out, is density multiplied by volume. So we quite simply do that. So we've got 3.5 multiplied by 216. And because that's in centimeters cubed and so is that, we can give the mass in grams, and that comes to 756 grams exactly. Okay, and that's the answer. This question is about a percentage of a percentage, really. So we've got 0.6 is 60%, and of that 60%, we want 35%, which we find by multiplying by that. If you put that into the calculator, it will give you 0.21, and that is the same as 21 over 100, or 21%. And that's the answer. This question is about probability and relative frequency. Now we're told that there's 3 times as many red as there are yellow. Okay, so we can write in here, say 3x and x for the moment. And we know that the total of those 4 must add up to one whole one. Okay, so I'm just going to say that 4x plus 0.1 plus 0.26 equals 1, because that accounts for all possibilities. If you rearrange that, you get 4x equals 1, take away those 2, which gives you 0.64. Okay, so therefore x is a quarter of that, which is 0.16. Okay, so I could at this point write in 0.16, and 3x is 3 lots of 0.16, which is 0.48. So they're the probabilities. Now the question is asking us how many counters are red. Well, if there's 500 in the bag, we just need 500 times that probability, which is 0.48. And that comes to exactly 240. And that's the answer to the question. Okay. We've got to calculate the volume of this prism, and this prism is made of a rectangle with a triangular roof, if you like, and I'm just going to find out the height of that roof section. So I'm going to call that length there x. Okay, and I'm going to recognize that it's a tan relationship. If that's 6 and that's 6, we've got opposite over adjacent. So x over 6 equals the tan of 35. So therefore, x is equal to 6 tan 35. I don't actually need to know what the value of that is. I can just use it in the calculation. Now, the volume of this prism is the cross-sectional area, that's the area of all of that, plus multiplied rather by the length 25. So this area is 14 times 12 for the rectangle, plus a half base times height for the triangle. Well, it's a half of the base times the height, which is this thing here. Okay. Now, the whole of that, everything I've written down, has to be multiplied by 25. So I could just put another bracket round the whole thing now and put a 25 in front of it. Now, if you're confident about this kind of thing, you can just enter that straight into the calculator as it is there, and it will give you the answer which you need. Okay, and that comes out to be 4830. Okay, and then it goes on 0.18. etc. Now, always write down a few more digits than you need, because it does say give it to 3 significant figures. So I'm just going to say that that's 4830, and that will be in centimeters cubed to 3 significant figures. Okay. Okay, in this question we've got to find the length of DC. That's this line across here. Now we need to find first of all the height of this triangle here, and then we work on the one on the left. So I'm just going to call this x at the moment, and I'm going to say that x over 7.3 equals the sine of 36 degrees, which means therefore that x is equal to 7.3 multiplied by the sine of 36. So I don't need to know what the value of that is, I can just use it as it is there. Okay, so having got that, I can use the fact that I've got an opposite and an adjacent, or the other way round. Well, if I use this angle up here as 42, okay, it keeps the unknown on the top of the fraction. So if I call the unknown y, that's this one here, okay, then I can say that y over x, you see, y over x is equal to the tan of 42, okay, because I know what x is, and then the unknown is y on the top of the fraction. So that means that y is equal to tan 42 times x, but we know that x is equal to 7.3 sine 36. So it's completely accurate that way. You haven't worked out any intermediate numbers, but you've shown clearly what you're doing. If you put that on the calculator, making sure, of course, that it's in degrees, it comes out to be 3.863. Okay, 3.863, etc. And that's equal to 3.9 centimeters to 1 decimal place. Okay, and that's the answer that you were required to give. Now, in this question, it's asking us to work out an estimate for the number of times a mouse's heart beats, but the reason it's using that word there is because it's telling you it's approximately 500,000 times each day. So what we need to do is we need that number, okay? We need to know that there's 365 days in a year, so that's the number of times it would beat in a year, and then times it by 3 because it's about 3 years, which is the life expectancy. And when we put that in, we get 547, okay, and then it's 500,000. Okay, and that number rounded is approximately 5.5 times 10 to the power of, well, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and that's the number of times a mouse's heart would beat in its lifetime. Okay, and in the second question, it's a division. We've got 105 grams, and we've got to divide that in to the mass of a single white blood cell. It's a very small number. It's going to be 1.5 times 10 to the 12 there. Now you can put that in the calculator using a button on the bottom row that says times 10 to the power. Make sure it looks like that on the calculator. When you press equals, that will come to the number 7 times 10 to the power of negative 11 grams exactly. Okay, and that's it. Okay, this question is about carrying out some transformations on this shape P. We've got to rotate it 90 degrees clockwise about 0 noughts to give the shape Q. Well, it's not too difficult to see that it would go from there across to there, down to there like that, and then there would be a line here. Okay, so that's been rotated 90 degrees clockwise about the point 0, 0, about this point here. Okay, now we then have to take this shape, well, we call it Q, and then we're moving it 4 places to the left and 6 places up. Okay, so that corner, that sharp corner, has now ended up here, and the rest of the triangle is going to fit like this. Okay, so it's going to go across here, down to there, and then across to there like that. Okay, and that's the triangle R. So we've got to now describe a single transformation. Okay, single transformation that will map R onto P. Well, you can probably see that's a rotation about this point here, okay, which is the 0.15. So we need to write down all of these keywords and bits of information. So rotation is the first thing we need to write. Okay, rotation 90 degrees, and to get from P to R, it's clockwise. Okay, so clockwise, and center of rotation has to be included, and it's the point 1,5. Okay, and this next one is very simple, because when you rotate all of the space on there about the 0.15, the invariant point is the center of rotation, because that goes nowhere. Everything else does, but that point stays exactly where it is. Okay, and that's the answer. In this question, I normally leave the first bracket as it is and multiply out the second and third brackets. So you've got the smaller bracket in the front all the time. Well, that works out to be x squared, x times x, minus 3x, and plus 4x is plus x. And I've also got minus 3 times 4, which is minus 12. Okay, and then I multiply this bracket by this one to give me x cubed plus x squared minus 12x. And then I've got plus 2x squared plus 2x and minus 24. 6 terms altogether. 2 pairs of them will pair up to make a single term. So that comes to x cubed, and I've got 3x squared. I've got minus 12x and plus 2x, which is minus 10x, and I've got my minus 24 at the end. And that is the full expansion, and A, B, C, and D are the letters, are the numbers rather, in front of the 4 powers of x. But you don't need to write them explicitly. You've answered the question by giving it in that form. Okay. Okay, this is about the sum of 3 consecutive even numbers. That means one after the other. So if we just said the first one was 2n, then the next one would be 2n plus 2. Okay, and the next one would be 2n plus 4. So they are 3 consecutive even numbers. I'm just going to put brackets around there just to separate the numbers from each other. Now, when you add that all together, you get 6n plus 6. And to show that that's a multiple of 6, you just take out a factor of 6 and you've got n plus 1. And you just need to say multiple of 6. That's it. Because once you've taken out that 6 from the bracket, then you're proving that it's a multiple of 6. Okay, and that's all you need to do for that question. So now in this question, you've just got to learn this. This is called the difference of two squares, okay? And it can be written as P plus Q multiplied by P minus Q. Okay, and for the second part, we actually use the difference of two squares. And if you understand how powers work, you'll know that this is 3 to the power of 30 plus 1 multiplied by 3 to the power 30, okay, minus 1. And you've got to show that that is the product of two consecutive even numbers. Well, 3 to the 30 minus 1, if you add 2 onto that, so 3 to the 30 minus 1 plus 2, okay, is now the same as 3 to the 30 plus 1, okay, because I've got minus 1 plus 2, which is the other term. So in other words, one term is 2 more than the other one. So that is 2 more than that, and that's it. Okay, in this question, you've got to show reasons for each stage of your working, so a bit of writing to do. And we've got to find the size of angle ABD. So let's just mark the angle that we're looking for. Okay, it's that one there. So step by step, we'll start with this angle here. And I'm going to write that that's 70, okay, because it's the opposite angles in a cyclic quadrilateral. So DBF, so angle DBF, this is what you would need to write down, equals 180 minus 110, which is equal to 70, and I'm just going to say cyclic quadrilateral, opposite angles, okay, in cyclic quadrilateral add to 180. Okay, that's my reason. Now, I'm going to now say that this angle here is 180. So this is angle BFD. Okay. There's two ways I could do this actually. I could do it without finding that angle. I could go straight over here and do that, which might be a bit quicker. This angle here is 45, okay, and the reason it's 45, it's called the alternate segment theorem. So it's angle CBF equals 45, and you can say alternate segment theorem. I'm abbreviating a bit just to save time, but you should really write it all out. Okay, and then I can use angles on a straight line. That's probably the easiest way. So angle ABD, which is the one we want, is clearly going to be equal to 180 minus the other two, the 70 and the 45. That comes to 65, and the reason angles on a straight line. Angles on straight line add to 180. Okay, And that's all my reasoning clearly shown. And there's the answer. Okay, now this is a question about a histogram, but unusually we're being asked to find the mean distance walked, not the median. Okay, so watch out for that. Now, to find the mean distance, we just have to first of all work out the frequencies. So we've got 14 to 18, that's 4, times 3, which is the frequency density. So 4 times 3 is 12. So that area there represents 12 people. Okay, this is 2 times 15, which is 30. This one works out to be 60, and this one here has an area of 18 times 0.5. Sorry, 18 times 1, I should say, which is 18. Okay, so when you add those together, you get the total, which is 120, as you'd expect. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to use the midpoint idea. We're going to say that these 12 people, on average, walked a distance of 16 kilometers. So we've got 12 times 16, okay, plus, well, we've got 30 times the average of those two, which is 19. We've also got 60 times 21, and finally we've got 18 times 22.5, okay, halfway. And when we put that on the calculator, well, we also need to divide it by the total number of people, which is 120. Okay, and it's called an estimate of the mean because we don't actually know what distances these 12 people did. We just know that they're somewhere in there. Okay, so when we work that out on the calculator, it comes to 20.225 kilometers. And normally on these, you wouldn't round them at all. So leave it like that. Okay, now this is a 3D Pythagoras problem, really. You're told that the length of the diagonal through the middle of that cube, okay, from A to H, is 22.7 to the nearest millimeter. We've got to calculate the lower bound of the length of the base of the edge. Well, they're all x, you see, like that, okay? Now, to get that line, we want the lowest possible length of the edge, which means that that line must be the lower bound of this. So the lower bound of that, so AH lower bound is equal to 22.65. Okay, and that's the number we must use in the calculation. Okay, now what we would do is we would do 22.65, okay, would be equal to the square root of x squared plus x squared plus x squared using 3D Pythagoras, which is the same root, the same as 3 lots of x squared, like that. Okay. Now we can rearrange this. We can say that 22.65 squared, okay, would be equal to 3x squared. So therefore, x squared would be, well, x would be the square root of that over 3, which is 22.65 over the square root of 3. Okay. And if we put that on the calculator, that will give us the number we're looking for. And that comes to 13.0769. Okay, 13.07698. And in this sort of question, you'd normally leave it like that because you're giving it as accurately as you can. Okay. And that should be actually in centimetres as well, because that's what the units are. Okay, now for this question, you've just got to understand how powers work. Basically, you've got to find the lowest common multiple of these numbers. Well, all of them will divide into 67 to the power of 81. That's the answer. Okay, because, for example, this one here would be 67 cubed times 67 to the power of 78 to give you that, and so on. Okay, so in this question about ratio, we've got to find the ratio A to B. Best thing to start with is just to get all the A's on one side. So I have 6A. Now if I take 2B away from the right, I get 6A equals 4B, which means that 3A must be the same as 2B. And then A is basically 2/3 of B. So the ratio of A to B is 2 to 3. Okay, so we kind of swap these over, cross these over when we convert it to a ratio. Okay, now the second question, a little bit more tricky. We've got to, first of all, I would just divide everything by 2. So we can rewrite the whole thing as 7x squared. So 7x squared equals 4y squared minus 3xy. Now if I bring everything over to the left, I'll be forming a quadratic, okay, with two variables. So if I take away, or rather add the 3xy, and then take away the 4y squared, I can set it equal to 0. Now, if you look at this carefully, you can see that it does actually factorize with the 7x and an x there, a 4y and a y here. And now we just need to get the signs correct. Okay, and this would be here, to get the 3xy, I need 7xy minus 4yx here, you see. So that would be the correct factorization. And if you multiply that out using FOIL, you will see that it does indeed come to this expression here. So that gives us the solutions that 7x can equal 4y to make that bracket 0, or x equals negative y. Well, the second one can't be true, but the first one can, because it says in the question that both x and y are greater than 0. Okay, so x can't be negative y, otherwise one of them would have to be a negative number. So if 7x is 4y, then the ratio x to y is 4 to 7. Okay, by the same reasoning we were using here. Okay, so that's the answer to that second part of the question.